I'm Jonathan Larson with TYTI Investigates, and the House of Representatives has just voted by a margin of 232 to 196 to approve a package of rules on how to go forward with its impeachment inquiry into Donald Trump. And we pretty much expected this outcome, the outcome being that the rules would be approved. What was being watched closely today was how that vote would break down. Very importantly, whether any Republicans would break ranks, how many Democrats might break ranks. And the reason that matters is because that's going to affect the narrative around how this vote is discussed in the future and how the impeachment inquiry is framed in the future, how effectively and credibly Republicans can claim that there are thumbs on the scale. So let's look at this. 231 Democrats voted for the rules, meaning basically saying, yes, let's move forward with the impeachment inquiry under these rules. 2 Democrats voted against the rules package, meaning that you can now argue that Democrats are not, that even some, in other words, Republicans can now say, even some Democrats say this rules package is unfair. So that's crucially important for the talking points going forward. The other aspect of the vote breakdown is that 194 Republicans voted against the rules, and none of them voted for the rules, meaning that denies Democrats the chance to say, look, it was a bipartisan vote. Even some Republicans thought these rules were a fair way to go into our impeachment inquiry. So that's what we're going to have now. Is the issue in our modern media environment is not what will the argument happen. It's what particulars will populate the argument. In other words, in the past, once upon a time, you could have you could assume that if the House of Representatives voted to do something, it would just be talked about as, okay, the House of Representatives voted to do it, and so it's going forward, and without a credible legal challenge to it or anything like that, it was taken at face value. What we have now is a media ecosystem in which anything no matter the lack of proportionality, no matter the lack of credibility, as long as there is someone in the party willing to say it. Sorry, I'm having phone issues every day, it seems. I hope that fixed it. Now, as long as they have something to hang their hat on, that debate will play out on TV, regardless of the merits of the particulars. So we're going to hear up through and after the final vote on impeachment, if the vote is to impeach, if the impeachment articles of impeachment are sent to the Senate, we're going to hear from Republicans that this was an illegitimate process. It was precisely because not a single Republican voted for it. So that was definitely a firewall that Republicans wanted very much to protect. And one other development that may end up being more important today was the testimony of Tim Morrison, the former advisor who was part of the National Security Council, which is essentially, within the White House. So he's testifying today, and the Washington Post had a report out this morning previewing some of what he's going to say, and it's important. He's going to confirm earlier testimony that the president pushed to withhold security aid until Ukraine announced an investigation of the Bidens. I'm simplifying some of the things there, but those are the big pieces, basically. The president was pushing to withhold security aid to Ukraine unless Ukraine agreed to investigate the Bidens. Now, here's a point I want to make, which goes back to that issue of proportionality. Quoting from the Washington Post, Morrison will also say that he did not necessarily view the president's demands as improper or illegal. Here's what's important about that. That doesn't matter. Right? You are there, Mr. Morrison, to testify to the facts that you know, not your legal opinions. And so the way testimony works is you don't have to accept the entire basket of what a witness tells you. If all you're looking, and journalism is the same way, if all you're looking for is one piece of information from someone, you can have a 3-hour conversation with them and they can tell you their entire views about why the world is flat. But if they've also told you, and by the way, I saw Donald Trump, taking lewd photographs of Ivanka or whatever you want to come up with, and that's the only piece you're interested in, you're not obliged to accept the rest of it. You just have a credible witness testifying to that fact. So his opinion as to whether it's improper or not really doesn't matter. Morrison will also say that, talk about a conversation between Trump and the U.S. ambassador to the EU. Quoting again the Washington Post, Morrison will say that during that conversation between Trump and the ambassador, Trump said he wasn't seeking a quid pro quo, but went on to insist that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had to publicly announce he was opening investigations of Biden and election interference. And the other point I wanted to make about Mr. Morrison is that this guy is a massive Bolton-level opponent of arms limitation treaties, not nuclear non-proliferation treaties, all the things that have reduced or at least lessened what would have been a larger proliferation of both standard weapons and nuclear weapons. And this is not a saint, this is not a progressive hero, and I think the left, more than the right, has a tendency to, anytime someone comes forward and is willing to tell a fact that they see as damaging to someone they don't like, they treat the person themselves as a hero. And we end up with this system where, not a system, but a dynamic in which people from the left who come forward are seen as not credible when they testify against someone from the right, because they don't have the hero mantle of bucking their tribal allegiances. So I think it's important that people on both sides not beatify these witnesses, these truth tellers, these whistleblowers. For one thing, that's what they're supposed to do, right? But for another, once you beatify them, now you make them credible to go on and say the other stuff, namely their opinion that, yeah, but it was fine. Their opinion will matter a lot less if they haven't been beatified. All right, so I'm not an impeachment scholar or anything like that, so I'm going to take this opportunity to cut my ramblings short today and see what you folks have to say, and maybe have a slightly more prolonged, interactive, back and forth conversation. Got a lot of good mornings here. Eve Gussman says, I've just gotten back from South Bend. I just got back from South Bend at midnight last night. I didn't realize you were there. I'm surprised that didn't come up. Eve, if you don't know already, is a regular here. And we still don't have a name for regulars, by the way. What's up with that? Jessica says, hey Jessica. Alice Murphy says, hi Jonathan, hello. DLJ says, good evening from Saigon. DLJ is peripatetic, if I'm saying that word correctly. Generic 2858 says, happy Halloween with a terrifying ghost. Alex S says, welcome home, thank you. Milo Wildland says, ack, giant hand. That's my giant meat flesh appendage. Francis Wolf says, hey, and with a wave from Birmingham, Alabama. Francis Wolf says, didn't he resign? Yeah, the Washington Post says something about, quote, senior U.S. official said Morrison, quote, decided to pursue other opportunities and has been considering doing so for some time. Jess Love is Louder says, good morning from Wisconsin. I got to know who the 2 dirtbag so-called Dems voted nay. 3 Republicans didn't vote, though. And I don't have the names just yet in terms of who voted no on the Democratic side. And there were 3 no votes from Republicans, and that could be either interesting and significant or entirely trivial, having nothing to do with anything. So we just don't know yet. Let's see, what else are you guys saying? Daniel Norman says probably the 2 are blue dogs. That's, if they're not blue dogs, then they're likely in swing districts where they're hanging on by a thread, for sure. Just Love is Louder says, happy to see you're back at home. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be home. Although I grow fonder of South Bend every time I'm there. It's, I mean, you know, every place is a special place, but seeing and hearing some of the stories of what they've been through, the struggles they have, and the unshakable faith and commitment from some folks there to just keep working on stuff. It's moving. Reptile Z says, remember to thumbs up before you leave. I'm not sure what that means. Is that something I'm supposed to be doing? I don't know. Eve Gussman says, the majority report mentioned your report and gave you a shout out. I did not know that. I'm going to have to ask Sam what that was all about. Thank you. No Middle Ground says, hey, Jonathan, just finished watching the vote. Question, why are the Republicans claiming they were shut out of the closed door investigation when they clearly were not? Well, I mean, in some sense, some of them were. But obviously, if you're a member of the committee and your own committee holds a closed door vote, you're allowed in that closed door vote. It's a closed door vote meeting of the committee. Sorry, not a vote, a meeting. So, yeah. Mr. Alder says, I don't see any members here from the TYT main show. I was hoping, since I told people yesterday to come here, that people would show up. Well, thank you, Mr. Elder, for going out there and banging the drum for us. I appreciate that. Dr. Workwise says, not one Republican voted yes. They are discussing to allow crimes committed in plain sight. Daniel Norman said, Daniel Norman, hello, says, I listened to some of the Republicans, and I don't think I would make a good politician because I could not stand there and lie and use deceit to prove their point. So I had a conversation about this with someone in South Bend. Sorry for the appearance of my cat, but she's trying to mess with everything. And he was talking about politicians. And we weren't talking about national politicians. We were talking about politicians on the Common Council of South Bend, Indiana. And my point was kind of that we're all politicians. We all are faced with compromises that we may need to make. We all have special interests that we need to keep happy. Hi, honey. We all have political forces in our lives and political choices to make. So I do sort of wish we could demonize the notion of politics and politicians somehow. And maybe the people who don't think they would be good politicians should be politicians and would make the best politicians of all. William Martyr says, good morning and a happy Halloween all. What's the buzz, Bubba John? I'm letting the commercial play out of respect for you and your channel. Thank you very much. Someone, by the way, the other day gave us, what is it called, a super chat donation. And I was terrified because I'm looking at the chat box and all of a sudden this bright blue banner comes up. It's like $5. What just happened? Do I owe $5? And so I had to ask our IT guys. And if you saw my video yesterday, you know that I'm clearly not schooled on this stuff. And I hope you'll forgive me because my job involves a lot of hats. I'm Ken Klippenstein's editor, I'm a reporter, I'm the publisher, the social media guy. So I try not to kick myself too badly when I fall down the job on one of them on one day. But anyway, my point being, I had to ask our IT folks, Aaron specifically, if you're a TYT long timer, you might know who Aaron is. Like, what just happened? Why did someone just throw $5 at me? Do I owe them $5? How does this work? And apparently there's something in these live chats where you can give us money, and I won't ask you to give us money. What I do ask is that you help us in ways that anyone can in terms of sharing the word and spreading the content that we do that you think is worthwhile. But I certainly am grateful and touched and moved if anyone's inspired to figure out how to make a super chat donation. And as I tell anyone who says, hey, I gave to support standing up the investigative reporting, like, you own this stuff. Everything we do that helps people or gives them information or insight so that they can make informed political choices in the future or reveals things, whatever it might be, we're proxies. Like, we're your proxies. It doesn't mean you can tell us what to do, but we are acting on your behalf in our best judgment of what we think you would want us to do. So thank you. And I won't be quite so afraid about money getting thrown at us in the future. Imperator 1 says, where's clickbait? I don't know what that means. Isn't this clickbait enough right here? Nathaniel Earl says, I'm from the main show. Hi, Nathaniel. I think we've seen you here before, but thank you very much. DK Workwise says, it really does make you despise politicians. I hope we cannot despise politicians. I think that's part of what got us here, right? How many years did we hear Democrats, mainstream establishment Democrats say, well, we're looking for non-politicians to run for office. We want soldiers, we want business people, entrepreneurs. Well, we now have our first businessman president, so. Milo Wadland says, you might want to encourage the right to go against their tribal instincts somehow, since facts seem rarer from them. William Martyr says, hitting the like button as the commercial plays. You are all in, man. Thank you so much. Jessica says, definitely a member and Twitter ranter for the main show. Thank you again, like I said, for, whatever anyone can do to support us, that means I try to rate it based, assuming that that's what you can do. And so it all means something to me anyway. Francis Wolf says, I'm old. I remember the Spiro of 76 before the tax man got him. I assume he means Spiro Agnew, the vice president. Before the tax man got him. Trust me, if we throw out Trump, Pence goes too. Wasn't Spiro Agnew gone before 76? Because Gerald Ford was the incumbent, no? Jessica says, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for all the hard work. I always feel like I'm slacking. So whenever someone says thank you for the hard work, I'm like, I don't work as hard as I should. But thank you for the spirit of the compliment. You're always conscious of what more you could be doing, right? Let's see. Cassidy Reese says, the super chat donation button is the $ that appears in the bottom right of the typing box where you type chat messages. I see. Okay, thank you. The Juice is back. Says, many on the left say there's no chance the Senate votes to remove Trump out of office. So can you explain what you think the strategy is? No. And the fact that I gave that answer is why I'll never be a pundit on TV. What I can do is what I can explain what the strategy might be, which is, even if it never passes the Senate, if the Senate is forced to take a vote, or Mitch McConnell doesn't permit a vote, that creates new political dynamics in Kentucky, Mitch McConnell's home state, and certainly in the states of senators who vote to protect Donald Trump, and those who vote against him. But the point is, it's a high-profile, touch-point issue where even if you don't win, you change the political dynamics around not just the presidential race, but down ballot races as well. And not just the Senate, not just the House, lots of down ballot races. If this goes on, if there is an ongoing public hearings into potentially impeachable offenses, and the House of Representatives then votes, yes, Donald Trump should be removed from office as the president of the United States for crimes and misdemeanors, or whatever the legal terminology is that they go with. And then the Senate begins debate on it, or begins hearings on it and debate, and then holds a vote. If you remember the Clinton era, you will know just how much oxygen this sucks up, just how hard it makes it for Trump to get anything else done, just how much it changes the political dynamic, dominates the conversation, and draws light to Trump's misdeeds. And so it's not just Senate and House of Representatives that's affected by this political dynamic. It's everyone. Governors will be asked about it. State assemblymen, members of the assembly will be asked about it. Members of other state legislators will be asked about it. Everyone eventually, as this grinds on, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, it's supposed to grind. Everyone's going to be asked at some point, be put on notice that they are expected to weigh in and share their opinion. Mr. Elder says, I'm supposed to start stripping when someone gives you money in live chat. So like I said, please don't give money in the live chat. We do not want any super chat donations here. All I ask is that you share our content and subscribe. In return for which, I will keep my clothes on. Tressa Dunham says, if Trump is removed, not sure that Pence would be any better. He's secretive, stoic, but mainly super supportive of Trump's policies. Well, yeah, he's super supportive of President Trump's policies. I'm not sure how supportive he would be of private citizen Donald Trump's policies. At least Trump blurts things out of the sludge in his brain. Tressa, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. This is a point I actually make a lot as well, which is that what if Pence would pursue similar or identical policies, but much more efficiently and effectively? Is that necessarily a better outcome? And plus, he would then become the incumbent. It's not likely that the Republicans would mount a super fierce primary against him at this late stage. Although it's possible you could have a free for all, I suppose. But in theory, you now give all those never Trumper Republicans someone palatable to vote for. So we don't know. Kelowna says news investigation squad. Kelowna, you need a marketing department, okay? Come on, news investigation squad. Honestly, but I do love that you are giving it a go. And look, bad ideas, and I'm not saying this is one. Bad ideas are great because they get everyone, including yourself, thinking about it. I remember before we launched up with Chris Hayes, we spent weeks, and we encouraged people, like, toss out the dumbest ideas that we could just to help us think about what we wanted to say and didn't want to say. And then literally the name came to me crossing, I think, Fifth Avenue, walking across the street in Fifth Avenue, because I was thinking about what kind of aspirational idea did we want to convey. So, okay. Imperator One says my dog is clickbait. Oh, right, yes, I referred to my dog Ruby as clickbait the other day. Jess Love is Louder says TYTI squad, which I like. The only problem is, and we didn't think about this, when you say the acronym TYTI out loud, I'm not sure that's a good thing unless we come up with another way to pronounce it. Nathaniel Earl says TYT all day. That's very cool. Thank you, Nathaniel. Let's see, what else do we have here? Sorry, I got bounced around. See, that's the thing. But the tough thing about staying with it is that if you move to go down, sometimes it'll pop you back to live. So, someone says, okay. So I will share. So now you guys are doing possible suggestions based around my name. And I will say I worked briefly at World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, freelancing, I guess, between gigs or something. And their nickname for me was J-Law at the time when J-Lo was the operative nickname for Jennifer Lopez. Kalita says it really makes you want to vote for people who are willing to represent you. I'm not sure what that's a reference to. No Middle Ground says, wish I could afford to be a member. Well, I wish everyone could afford to be a member, and I wish we didn't have a system where people had to worry about affording to have anything. But the fact that you wish you could afford to be a member and you are choosing to use your time, which is a commodity just as precious as money. You are using your time and giving us your time. And that, to me, means just as much, if not more, as making a payment. It's not just your time watching, but speaking here, sharing your thoughts, being part of the conversation. That, to me, for what it's worth, means just as much, if not more. So thank you. Wendy says, sorry, I know this is off topic, but is Ken Klippenstein married? Wendy, come now. Hannah Pause says, nice job, Jonathan. Wonderful work. Thank you. Thank you very much, Hannah. I feel like today I especially did not earn it because I basically just looked and saw what the vote was and said, okay, let's talk about that because everyone's going to. Milo says, Agnew went early 73. Okay, that sounds about right to me. Francis says he was going to run in 76. I didn't realize that, or if I did, I didn't remember it. Mr. Elder says it's only $5 a month to be a TYT member and it's well worth it. Well, that's very kind of you, Mr. Elder, to say. And I certainly hope people agree that it's worth it, but I know that individuals have to for an individual to say it's worth it, that means it's worth not having the other thing they might need for $5 a month. And that's a call that only you can make. So no one should feel bad about not being a member. Please, please do not think that, if anything, I feel bad that you're not getting all the content that the TYT produces. Although I should add that everything that TYT investigates, none of it's behind a paywall. We want people to see our reporting. We want to reach people who are not in the TYT bubble. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean the TYT community. But we want to reach people who don't necessarily hear the things that TYT has to say. And that's the reason TYT Investigates was created the way it was, to do articles that were done in the classic mainstream media style and printed that way, published that way. Not to echo everything about mainstream media, but to be informed by, I hope, better values in deciding what to cover, but then covering those things in more traditional, journalistic ways, so that other mainstream outlets will pick them up. And by the way, if you didn't notice, Ken Klippenstein, who is or is not married, he was his work, one of his stories for TYT Investigates, was read into the Congressional Record yesterday in the House. So that's pretty cool. So thanks and congratulations to Ken. And again, thank you, members and non-members, for making that happen. Skywatcher9928 says, you are awesome. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you very much. I am actually not awesome. If you want to see some non-awesomeness on display, you can go try and listen to the audio on yesterday's edition of TYTI Daily. But thank you very much for the sentiment. It means a lot. Thank you. Santos D says, when TYT stops pretending Warren equals Sanders, I'll consider subscribing. So welcome to our new subscriber, Santos D, because I am part of TYT and I'm not pretending that Warren equals Sanders. Now, that said, I think people are allowed to like two different politicians, even if one, by definition, is going to have fewer policies that you support, or a style that you support less, or whatever it is. So I think the fact that people at TYT are being enthusiastic or even endorsing more than one politician, I don't think that necessarily means that they're saying there's an equivalence there. But to be honest, I don't follow a lot of the political stuff, if any, so I can't really speak to that. But if you consider me a representative of TYT, then I think I can certainly assert on my own behalf that I do not pretend that Warren equals Sanders. And again, welcome to our new subscriber, Santos D. Thank you very much. Let's see. No Middle Ground says, happy Halloween, Jonathan. Thank you very much. And happy Halloween to all of you folks. Kelly Wana says, the Larson Daily Show. I actually used to work at the Daily Show a long time ago. But the other thing is, it's very flattering to have it sort of be me-centric. Yay, me! But it's also about you, and sometimes it's about Ken. So I wouldn't want it to be exclusive in that way. Let's think about something that describes a community and ascribes values to it. I'm gonna think about this a little bit more too. Hannah Paz says, I think that Moscow Mitch, that's Mitch McConnell, the Republican majority leader in the Senate, will eventually come around to impeachment. Wow. Do you mean to allow the vote, Hannah, or are you suggesting that Mitch McConnell would actually cast a vote to impeach Donald Trump? Because I cannot see that happening. Santos D says, TYT thinks taking corporate cash is terrible, except for Warren. So, Santos D, since you are a new member, I want to address your concern here. There are very few things that TYT thinks. And what I mean by that is, TYT is dozens of people. So, Cenk, to his credit, I think, and to his detriment sometimes, is a real powerful advocate of the idea that people within TYT ought not just to have differing opinions, but to feel free and be encouraged to have civil disagreements about them, including publicly. So we've seen that before. And my point is just that there are very few things that TYT officially thinks. TYT is a company, it's a brand, I guess. It's a show, it's a lot of different things, but it's not monolithic. So in terms of who does the thinking, those are individuals, and they have different views on Warren taking corporate cash or anyone taking corporate cash. Cassidy Reese is talking about the great deal for being a member. I'm happy to hear that you guys think so. That's fantastic and literally heartwarming. Dan A says Agnew left, allowing Nixon to appoint a clean VP. Today it would be like Pence resigning to allow someone like Matt Gaetz to be VP because Pence is too corrupted by the scandal. So it's an interesting point, Dan, but I actually think that in the public eye, Pence is considered relatively squeaky clean, and I'm not sure that Democrats could change that between now and November 2020. Mr. Elder says, okay, Mr. Elder is banging the drum for TYT membership. Thank you. Kalita says it could actually help distracting corporate Democrats for progressives to get on stage. Dixon Sider says this just proves that we can't use a centuries-old document to protect our country. We need a complete refresh of the Constitution, updated for 2020 and the world as it is today. I think I disagree, Dixon. I think I respect and understand the sentiment, but to me, the issue I think there are similar issues with the Bible. It's all about exegesis, right? About this notion of interpreting, right? And I have no reason to think that fresh off the presses documents wouldn't be equally susceptible to false equivalencies and definitional drift and epistemological failure. I think that what we have is the problem, dear Brutus, is not in our documents, but in ourselves, I guess I would say. We need a cultural, I think, refresh in terms of, we've been hit with a number of challenges, right? We lost the fairness doctrine, I think, back in the 80s. We've had corporatization and consolidation of the media. And so you've also had the internet come along. All of these things have eroded traditional gatekeepers, which, for all their faults and problems, and they were myriad, they did observe some, not perfectly, but did observe some norms of that's wrong, that's not, that's a fact, that's not, that's precedent, that's not. And they for that reason, you didn't, and I've talked about this before as well, about like Twitter, right? Of a newspaper, the form a newspaper takes is you get a front page that tells you not just here's the story, but this is an important story. And if you want the non-important stories, you've got to go all the way to the back, and there's the Nats winning the World Series. Sorry, I don't like sports. So on Twitter, we don't have that. Everything's the front page. So if Maggie Haberman tweets out her story, it's the same. It gets the same play and the same 240, 280 characters, whatever it is, as if she tweets out, her feelings about the World Series. And there's no differentiation. There's no different font. There's no different point size or anything like that to indicate this is a real story and this is someone saying something. And as long as we've got problems like that, I don't think changing our documents is going to matter all that much. We need an epistemological revolution, including on the left, right? The left has spent decades telling us that everyone's opinion deserves respect. And now they're apparently making an exception for Nazis, which, by the way, is a good thing, but you should have made that exception back in the 60s and 70s when you were saying everyone's opinion deserves respect. Shitty opinions don't deserve respect. And we should never say that. Opinions deserve respect if they pass muster, if they pass some kind of rigorous scrutiny, if they're fact-based, if they're logical, if they're just, if it's just the world is flat, there's no climate change, those things don't deserve respect. Why? Because not all opinions do deserve respect. So we've got some work to do before documents can save us. And I happen to be a big fan of the Constitution. I think it's fairly brilliant in that it makes us fight. It's a system for fighting. And I think that's the key to making a democracy work, is to ensure that fights happen, not just make them possible, but to make them inevitable. Okay. Linda Mitchell says kitty photobomb. Yeah, I'm lucky that that's the worst she's done. Usually her trick, and this is why I call her murder cat, is to weave in and out around my feet as I'm navigating those stairs there, typically in the dark when I have to wake up and go walk the dog. So that's why I call her murder cat. And if one day the TYTI Daily comes up live and you see my wrecked body lying twisted on the stairs, you'll know it's my widow kitty cat who succeeded in killing me. Sherry Addis has an interesting story that I'm not sure I want to read out loud because I'm not sure I understand it or have fact check it. So people are free to go check it out. I'm just not familiar with it. No offense, Sherry. William Martyr says, I really think their strategy of not throwing the whole book at him with the emoluments clause and the sexual misconduct and just the things he said in public are damned incriminating falls short. So this is I do think, an interesting strategic question, and I don't tend to be a big fan of strategic conversations because I'm not sure where it gets you. But in this case, I do think there's something to be gleaned about our process and our system and our culture in terms of looking at why Democrats are going with a relatively narrow field of complaints rather than choosing from the vast menu of possibilities or just ordering everything. And part of that, I think, may go back to what I was saying earlier about the American audience right now, which is the American audience, I think generally, and this is, if you want to call me an elitist, I guess I can't argue with you on this front, but Jefferson thought this too, that it was something like the best defense of democracy is an educated populace. And we have a lot of people who just don't pay attention. And so politics depends on showbiz. You need to get people's attention to get popular support. And it's tougher to do that the more things you're asking attention for. So I get that from that when you take the oath to uphold and protect the Constitution, that obliges you to pursue impeachment proceedings anywhere and everywhere that you think they apply. And so I'm torn between, just like any politician, I'm sure, between the obligation to the Constitution and the desire to be effective in that, right? Which honors the constitutional oath more? To do everything, in the most literalist way and file impeachment charges on every single thing you could possibly think of or find out and have none of them go anywhere, or choose one that actually fulfills the spirit of that constitutional clause by imposing at least political accountability, if not actual legal accountability. And I don't have an answer to that. Let's see. Agnew left. Reptile Z says, Agnew left, Spiro Agnew left the vice presidency to avoid prison for taking outright bribes, paper bags full of cash. No Middle Ground says, as stated, I support TYT by sharing and views, and thank you very much for that. It means just as much as Santos D's new membership. Jacobo Fernandez says, which Democrats voted no? I don't know yet, haven't looked that up. William Marta says it wouldn't be hard to go out at like the 25th Amendment because he's demonstrated a pattern of being unfit for office across the board of criteria. So the 25th Amendment empowers a various configuration of cabinet officials and so on to basically say, hey, this guy we work for, or woman theoretically, is unfit for office, so we're getting rid of them. That might be possible on paper. You say it wouldn't be hard, but the people in place are not going to do that. They're picked not to do that. William Martyr says John is the Bernie Sanders of live chat. I'm not sure what you mean by that, let alone whether it's a compliment. But given that this is TYT, I guess I should assume it's a compliment. So thank you very much. My live chat just kablooied. Da, 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 da. Boy, you guys are just crazy with the chat today. Okay, okay, so Linda Mitchell says, take money out of politics, give the people back their own power. So here's where, here's a good example of TYT not being monolithic. And I do think I might possibly be the only person, maybe I'm the monolithic one on this one, but in comparison to the rest of TYT, I'm not sure what that really looks like or how effective it is. I'm not sure how you take the money out of politics. So what I mean by that, for instance, is let's say that super PACs were outlawed, no campaign ads were allowed in any medium. You couldn't donate any money. Corporations, anyone who made over $12,000 a year couldn't donate to any political politician. Basically, every single avenue for money getting into politics was shut off. So I'm the surviving Koch brothers, and I'm sitting around with Sheldon Adelson and Ron Cameron and who knows who else, and we're sitting there fuming about the inability of buying politicians. So what do? We start our own news network. We pool all our money, the same amount of money we would have given, and we just start, blasting out editorials read by some college senior on the air, and we just, start putting out our content. And that's essentially Fox News. It's hard to argue that any political spending has been more effective than the spending of Fox News. And you can impose the most draconian limitations on political spending, and Fox News will still keep chugging along. So I think my son is a huge Jeff Goldblum fan, and I've seen the scene many times. But I guess what I would have to say is money finds a way. The money's gonna get through. The money's gonna morph. It's gonna change genders if it needs to reproduce. It's gonna do what it has to regain its influence. So I don't know. I don't have like a plan for what to do about it. But there is a part of me that thinks go fully libertarian on it, let everyone do everything, and see what that creates in terms of public demand for accountability, right? If there's no Federal Election Commission, which there kind of isn't, and someone's running for office and they put up all these campaign ads, maybe enough people say, wait a minute, who's paying for these? And release your actual financial records to show it. I don't know. And I'm always I try to be wary about any of my own libertarian instincts, because to some extent I recognize there's sort of an infantile mindset behind that, and I try not to honor it too much. But I do wonder sometimes what communal social forces we suppress when there's the paternalistic mechanism for people to rely on instead. X4 says, Holy Stromboli, I love all you people. Well, that's cool. I love that. Caranola says, don't apologize, Jonathan, for disliking sports. I should add, it's not that I don't like sports. It's just that the mania over millionaires and what they do with baseballs and footballs and basketballs is a little mystifying to me. And don't get me wrong, I get that there is beauty and poetry in a lot of these things, and I've actually been to some athletic events, professional athletic events, and there's stuff to enjoy there. But the tribalistic mania that we see and the we won stuff, I'm like, you were 400 miles away. There's something a little bread and circuses about it. Jessica says, Morning Joe was actually even talking about cutting money out of politics this morning. I was shocked. I'm shocked you were watching Morning Joe, Jessica. Reptile Z, I'm kidding. You can watch your TV. It's okay. Reptile Z says, does anyone else expect Trump taking credit for the World Series win? X-Force says, say epistemological one more time, LOL. No, I will not. Just Love is Louder says, I'm so happy the Nats won. You see, okay, I got fooled. It's my fault. I didn't see it coming. All right, now people are calling each other names. Cassidy Reese says, nothing in our current leadership is logical or deserving of respect, both Republican and Democrat. Vote Bernie. So Cassidy, if you will allow me this, I understand and sympathize with disdain towards leadership, but I think blanket condemnation is a dangerous thing for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's important to be relativistic and to find, to identify and to cheer on the quarters of leadership that are doing it best, right? I think that's important, and I think that because of the other reason I don't like the sort of blanket disdain, which is something that I was remembering a minute ago. Give me a second here. Right. I think it blinds us to, if we just say, oh, they're all crooked, that blinds us to and absolves us of doing the work to identify what are the forces that created this less than ideal leadership. Why don't we have the leadership we want? If we just say, oh, they're all terrible, well, maybe they are, but why are they terrible? Were they born terrible? Did they get terrible along the way? And if they are terrible, how did they get these positions? Why were they able to? So I think systems and social forces have a lot more to do with our dissatisfaction with our politics than the possibility that the individuals inhabiting those positions just happen to be terrible. And I say the same thing all the time about this crazy idea. You know, people say, oh, Washington's such a terrible town. I'm like, Washington is the one town that literally represents all of America. Like, the people who run Washington are the people, they're not from Washington. Like, this idea that when everyone in America is represented results in the worst possible place, results in a magically toxic place, that's magical thinking in a really terrible sense, to suggest that Washington ruins things. What Washington is the necessity to engage with others with whom you disagree, which sometimes leads to compromise. And that, I think, is really what people often hate, is what they see as corrupt compromise or needless compromise or weak compromise, things like that. So I guess again, as with political leaders, I would say if you're hating on Washington in this magical thinking sense of, oh, it's just a bad place, we're missing something important in the discussion we ought to be having, I think. What science do you have to prove definitively? I'm not going to read the name because I'm not, it just seems like a trolly name, but what science do you have to prove definitively that climate change is caused by man? So let's do this. Let's say that 50% of the scientific community agreed that climate change was caused by man. Only 50%. And the other 50%, some of them said, no, it's definitely not. We've definitely proved that it's, video games doing it. And then there was another percentage, a third group that said, we just don't know. And then there was another group that said, climate change isn't even happening. But the bottom line in our scenario, BP, I'm going to call you BP for the purposes of this conversation. The bottom line is, it's not 95% like we have now. It's only 50% of the scientific community, the relevant scientific community, thinks that climate change is caused by man. Now I'm going to take a detour, but I'm coming back. Back in the aughts, a book came out. I forget, Ron Suskind was the author. He's a journalist. I forget what the name of the book was, but it discussed a Cheney doctrine, which was, I think it was the 1% doctrine it was known as. And he said Cheney's point of view was something like, if there's a 1% chance that some terrorist in Pakistan is planning to blow us up, we're obliged to go and get that person and stop it. And I happen to disagree with that number, if not the concept. But in this case, now we're coming back to climate change. Why wouldn't you want to stop it or try, right? Let's say we're wrong and that, oh, it turns out it wasn't man-made. And so, dang it, we invented new technologies, created new jobs, and reduced pollution all for nothing. What's to be lost? Do the cost-benefit analysis here. Even if it turns out, oh, we were wrong. Wow, we blew that science. Do the cost-benefit analysis of doing it and being wrong versus not doing it and being right, right? When you look at those things in those terms, there's no question. There's no question. If I'm standing on a railroad track and someone tells me to get off the railroad track because the train is coming, I can either expend energy to move off the railroad track and thereby lose a little bit of the weight I've been trying to lose, but then maybe no train's coming because the track has come. Well, I've still lost the weight, and meanwhile I've avoided a scenario in which I say, well, you haven't proved the train is coming, so I'm going to stay on the track. The downside of being wrong there is you die. So the downside of being wrong and doing something about climate change is you invent new technologies, create new jobs, and make pollution, you lessen pollution. That's the downside of being wrong and fighting man-made climate change. The downside of not fighting climate change, man-made climate change, and being wrong is that climate change happens. And there was just a new map put out by, I don't mean to offend anyone's sensibilities, scientists, showing, I think it's Thailand, Bangkok, Shanghai, Mumbai, going bye-bye by 2050, which is only 30 years from now because of rising waters and the fact that their elevations are so low. So if that's the 30-year price we pay for being wrong, why wouldn't we take the chance of being wrong and doing something when there's no downside to that? It's an insane argument. You're being played. You're just being played. Okay, what else? Cassidy Reese says his border collie, or her border collie, sorry. Cassidy Reese says their border collie is Murder Dog. He is constantly underfoot. X4 says border collies are the best, most intelligent dogs on earth. You have to give them stuff to do. I'm so glad I do not have a dog that requires me to give her stuff to do. Let's see. No Middle Ground says they're going after the Ukraine because the 6th District of New York is waiting for him. Remember? I don't remember. Caranola says say that 3 times fast. Do you mean epistemological? Epistemological? BP says history of the world and past climate patterns. So if you know anything about science or math, you know that because things have happened before does not mean that things will continue to happen in the future. So that's really a bad argument. William Martyr says, I believe the simplest way to explain climate change is that UVC, which is deadly, is normally 100% reflected by the ozone layer. However, UVC has been measurable at the surface. Capiche? X4 says, oh wait, Jonathan is talking. I should listen. That's okay. Dorinaire, I don't recognize the name, which maybe suggests you're new, in which case, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. Says, could they not publicize the most headline-worthy charges, but continue the investigations for all legal threats? Well, that's, I think, a really smart way of threading the needle on that, which is, and plus it potentially gives you the option of a menu. Let me summarize, I think, what you're saying here. The idea could be that you could have low-level, or at least low-profile investigations continuing into everything, all the potentially impeachable offenses, but only sort of really publicize and spotlight whatever happens to be the one that's got the most heat around it or seems the most likely to be effective. And that also gives you the option, the a la carte option of just if one happens to fizzle, a witness is blocked, or the White House won't release testimony, won't release documents or whatever. you've got your God, I can't even remember what the term is now in theater for the person who comes in, the stand I don't remember, but you've got the next blah, 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 epistemological. You've got the next investigation to go to. Let's see. Caranola says, since they seem to be letting anything become a POTUS candidate. Cassidy Reese, I just lost you. Sorry, Cassidy, I lost you. William Martyr says, LOL, getting money out of politics has to start at the top. The illegal private world central banking system owned by the Society of Jesus, which also controls the Vatican and the Jesuit order. William. Let's see what else we've got. X-Force says, greed is why they don't want to stop it. The rest are deluded and brainwashed and continuously vote against their own interests. Again, I don't think these are good terms to think about people. As deluded and brainwashed. It makes us, it's the madman fallacy, right? I've talked about this before. This notion that political opponents are irrational or evil and therefore will not respond to systemic change, will not respond to social incentives. I think you are taking a lot of people off a lot of arrows out of your quiver. All right, I'm skipping to the bottom. I'm sorry, X-Force. William Sullivan says, let's order a pizza and go all day. I have things to do. I was in South Bend. I didn't get home until midnight, and I've got to go pick up my son from school, also all that stuff. Dornair says, also, I'm an old TYT member, but new to the TYTI live stream. I even donated to create TYT Investigates. Well, welcome, thank you, and again, I can't stress this enough. I hope just go take a look at tyt.com/investigates and scroll all the way down to the bottom, and then go to the previous page, and then go to the previous page, and then go to the previous page. I hope that your experience of that will be to see story after story of us revealing some piece of information that someone didn't want out there and someone else did, and giving that to the world and letting them use that and know it and have that as part of the way they approach politics and the decisions they make and the votes that they cast. Again, if you missed me saying it earlier, your report, Dornier, your report was cited in the House of Representatives and entered into the congressional record yesterday. That report existed because of what you did, a button that you pressed, whether it was a super chat donation or whatever it was that you did to give money to create TYT's investigative reporting capacity, which at the moment is myself and Ken. That's yours. You made that happen. So I hope you feel good about it. I hope you feel good looking at those stories, or just Googling around to see how other outlets have picked up the reporting that you made possible. Let's see. Jess Love is Louder says, when the scientists told us Wall Street will go underwater because of climate change, I felt very conflicted about that fact. I understand that you're being facetious, and I don't want this to come off as being like, well, let me explain something to you, Jess. And I don't know if I would call that mansplaining because I don't know your gender. But I'm going to use what you just said to make a point about climate change, which I am 100% confident that you are aware of, and I understand that you're making a funny joke. But the point is that if climate change seriously starts to threaten Lower Manhattan, Wall Street's going to be the first people out of there, right? It's not going to be them who pay the price. They're going to move out to suburban Jersey. They've already got back office capacity in Jersey. They're going to move elsewhere in New York City, maybe to higher elevations in Brooklyn. It's not them we've got to worry about, and that's a bigger part of the problem, is that there's no political constituency for taking care of the people who will be most affected. Okay, so I'm actually going to risk X-Force's wrath, but I'm going to say goodbye. Okay, I've got a few more at the end here that we'll look at real quickly. So I lied, but I'm letting you guys know you can start packing your bags and getting ready and assembling your things. X-Force says they will build an 80-mile high seawall around Manhattan before they let Wall Street go underwater. I don't think so. I don't think so. For one thing, I agree. They will do something. I agree, they will do something, but it's not just Wall Street. You've also got subway lines and commuter lines coming in, and that would mean you're continually expanding that protective circle out to New Jersey and Brooklyn, and I just don't think there's the will for that kind of hermetic sealing off of the region. I think, hell, if nothing else, like I said, they're already moving, have moved back office stuff. So they're really remaining on Wall Street right now is about the prestige of saying you're on Wall Street, but it's also about the social and cultural stuff of the high-rolling cocaine addicts who run your Wall Street firm and them wanting to be there. That can change in a minute, right? With Sandy, look at the flooding downtown. And if you get a wall, right? If you really do get a wall and you get a big storm, well, that just keeps the water in. So you might be able to protect yourself from rising seawaters, but you're not going to be able to protect yourself from all extreme climate phenomena going forward. So I just see it happening incrementally. We'll see. There was one other, someone had a specific question. Mutsu, R-Y-V space M-U-T-S-U. So I apologize for not saying your name correctly. And I also thank you for joining here and being here. Asks, is there a separate membership to engage with John, not being the same people repeated? I think the answer to that is either no or yes, and you already have it. This is it. You're looking at it. I'm not sure what you mean about the second part, which is not being the same people repeated. But if you want to be engaged with what we do here at TYT Investigates, subscribe at YouTube, like and follow us on Facebook. Go follow myself and Ken Klippenstein on Twitter. I think his Twitter handle is just his name, and mine is @JTLarson. And then that's it. You're now a member of TYT Investigates. Those are the platforms where we communicate with folks and where we hear from you as well. So I hope that feels like membership, because I don't know that I'd be doing a lot differently if we were charging you money. So enjoy your free membership, I would say. Unlike Santos D, who became a paying member earlier today in that historic moment. X-Force says they love me. Thank you for everything you do and allowing us to be part of it. Well, again, like, it's right back at you, and thank you for everything. And as for allowing you to be part of it, it's a privilege to me that you folks show up. So I don't think of it as allowing. I think of it as exploiting. This is something I hope you can tell, because I usually have a smile on my face that I enjoy these, and it helps us, right? When that's the sort of horrible, guilty voice in the back of my head, is that, I do this because it helps the channel, because you guys get enthusiastic about what we're doing and you get engaged, and so you go off and you share, which helps the channel. And I'm sufficiently introverted that I would not do this, right? Otherwise, if it didn't have like a material benefit. If you go back and watch my initial videos, I'm clearly very hesitant and reluctant to do it. And when I've been at the company for, gosh, almost 3 years now, and I was not really a public face to start with. I didn't have a daily outlet for communicating with you folks because I sort of think, no, I'm just trying to do some reporting here. No one needs to see my face. So I guess my point is I get something out of this, and I want you folks to know that, and so not feel like you're getting something, but also that you are bringing a lot of value to me. I just want to make sure that you understand the value that you represent to me, both here, by which I mean, of course, here because epistemological, but also to the channel, to the outlet, to TYT Investigates. Our work has more impact the more impact you give it, and that's what you do by showing up. So thank you. I will see you tomorrow for Media Analysis Friday, and hopefully I'll have a little bit more coherent thoughts because I won't still be unpacking from South Bend. And in the meantime, take care of each other, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you tomorrow. 11:30 a.m. every weekday. Bye.